15 things that will happen at the coronation of King Charles III. King Charles III acceded to the throne on September 8, 2022, immediately after his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, died. His accession is a long-standing ritual that was planned long before the death of the reigning monarch. The state's customary mourning period of 10 days was observed, and the king even added an additional 7 days of mourning, which was completed on September 26, 2022. At the end of the mourning period, the appropriate officials and dignitaries moved on to other matters, such as King Charles III's coronation, which will be held on Saturday, May 6, 2023. With the coronation of King Charles III imminent, a few questions come to mind. Keep watching as we answer some of the more obvious questions and enlighten you with 15 things that will happen at the coronation of King Charles III. Number 1. Venue. For several centuries, the coronation of the king or queen has been at Westminster Abbey. Unlike his mother, King Charles III plans to reduce the number of guests in attendance to 2,000 people, in line with the current safety and health regulations. In 1953, when Queen Elizabeth II was coronated, there were few worries about security and health threats like terrorist attacks or the pandemic, so the government and the monarchy could easily afford a guest list of 8,000 people. Westminster has been dubbed the Royal Church because it's seen 17 royal weddings and over 30 funerals of kings, queens, as well as other prominent figures like Isaac Newton. Since 1066, Westminster Abbey's been witness to 39 coronations, dating back all the way to William the Conqueror. The only exceptions were Kings Edward V and VIII. The coronation of King Edward VII in 1902 established the contemporary coronation ceremony, which we'll witness in May. Number 2. Archbishop of Canterbury. A distinguished figure who will be present at the coronation ceremony is the Archbishop of Canterbury. He's the one who will officiate the coronation and is responsible for the anointing, blessing, and consecration of the crowned monarch. As the highest-ranking priest of the Church of England, the Archbishop's opinion and approval is important for the success of the ceremony. The current Archbishop, Justin Welby, is the 105th Archbishop of Canterbury and a member of the House of Lords. Many people wanted the coronation date to be on June 2, 2023, because Queen Elizabeth's coronation took place on June 2, 1953. Unfortunately, certain important events and the schedule of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Earl Marshal, Duke of Norfolk, had to be considered. Number 3. Recognition of all faith. Traditionally, the sovereign oath requires the sovereign to take on the role of head of the church and be the defender of the faith. However, King Charles III intends to recognize the diverse religions functioning across the United Kingdom. He plans to change the oath from Defender of the Faith to Defender of Faith, but that would require an amendment of the law, which will not be ready before his coronation. So, the palace will likely make alternate oaths that will be taken before or after the coronation. The law will be modified and updated before the coronation of Prince William, the Prince of Wales. This will signify the current position of the United Kingdom socially, religiously, and as the monarchy looks towards the future. A few days after his accession, King Charles vowed to protect the space of faith and uphold the various religions, cultures, traditions, and beliefs of the citizens of the United Kingdom. Number 4. Queen Consort. Per custom, the Queen Consort will be crowned after the king in a simpler ceremony. This is where Duchess Camilla will officially be given the title of Queen Consort. Before she passed, the late queen expressed her wish for Camilla to use the title in a statement marking her Platinum Jubilee. Consort is a term used to describe the spouse of a sovereign. Camilla will be the first consort crowned at a British coronation since 1937, when Queen Elizabeth's mother, the Queen Mother, was crowned alongside her husband King George VI. In the case of Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Philip was not crowned alongside his wife. because male consorts aren't given the title of king. The royal family website doesn't elaborate as to why, but a possible reason is that the title of king could be considered to outrank the title of queen. Number 5. The procession. The coronation ceremony starts with a procession to the Abbey. Invited dignitaries and recognized officials will follow a route lined with spectators and military personnel from across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. The arrival route will likely be from Buckingham Palace to Trafalgar Square, down to Westminster Abbey. The king will arrive at the Abbey in the gold state coach. It's been an iconic sight at royal coronations, jubilees, and other remarkable ceremonies. Using Queen Elizabeth II's coronation as a reference, the return procession started from the Abbey through to Trafalgar Square, moved towards Hyde Park from Piccadilly, continued through Marble Arch and Oxford Circus to Regent Street and Haymarket, connecting to the Mall, and finally ending at Buckingham Palace. The procession is always characterized by a lot of parades and pageantry. It starts with a band, troops from the Commonwealth realms, the English military, and other security personnel. Queen Elizabeth II's coronation ceremony was over 3 hours long, but her son King Charles III wishes his entire coronation to only be 1 hour long, which is wishful thinking since the ceremony at the Abbey will take at least an hour. However, King Charles III's procession will likely take a shorter route. Number 6. Inside the Abbey. The coronation ceremony should follow the same patterns as previous ones. However, many of us weren't alive for Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953, so it'll be a completely new experience. St. Edward's crown will precede the arrival of King Charles III into Westminster Abbey. It will be borne by the Lord High Steward and flanked by 2 other peers chosen by the king. At the same time, the Archbishop of Canterbury and other archbishops along with their assistants will wait outside for King Charles III's arrival. On arrival, King Charles III will be wearing the robe of state, which is the long mantle worn on top of his clothing, made of red velvet, gold embroidery, regal ermine, and gold lace from Canada. The crimson surcoat is another essential ceremonial piece of attire that's worn under the other robes for the better part of the ceremony. The procession continues into the Abbey, through the center aisle, down to the stage, while the choir sings a hymn. The king then prays and sits on the chair of the estate near the altar, while the bishops bring the ceremonial items like the Bible, paten or discus, and chalice. The royal ceremonial items, which are in the custody of the appointed peers of the realm, are given to the Archbishop of Canterbury, who in turn passes it to the Duke of Westminster, who places it on the altar. Number 7. The recognition. After all the ceremonial materials been assembled and the important dignitaries are in their positions, the Archbishop of Canterbury will present the monarch to the people. This is known as the recognition. He, alongside other high-ranking officials like the Lord High Chancellor of Britain, the Lord Great Chamberlain of England, and the Earl Marshal of the United Kingdom will stand before the people. The Archbishop will face the audience in each direction, saying, "Sirs, I here present unto you King Charles, your undoubted king, wherefore all you who are come this day to do your homage and service, are you willing to do the same?" The crowd will reply with a loud, "God save King Charles," indicating their joy and recognition of the monarch. At each shout, the king will bow in acknowledgement and trumpets will be sounded. The king then returns to the chair of the estate and the archbishop to the altar. Number 8. The oath. The oath shows the willingness of the monarch to serve the people to the best of his capacity. It's the only section of the ceremony required by law, and it's ever evolving to effectively describe the boundary of the monarch's control in the UK and the Commonwealth. After the king sits down in the chair of the estate, the archbishop will ask the king some questions, to which he'll reply and give the appropriate promise. He'll then stand from the chair of the estate and move towards the altar, while the sword of state will be carried in front of him. At the altar, he'll kneel and place his right hand on the Bible, take the coronation oath, and kiss the Bible. He'll then proceed to apply the royal sign manual, his signature, to a transcript of the oath, and go to the chair of estate while the Bible's handed to the Dean of Westminster. Number 9. The anointing. In this section of the ceremony, King Charles will be stripped of all symbols of status and be left with plain white clothing with no decoration. As the choir sings Handel's hymn, Zadok the Priest, composed for the coronation of King George II in 1727, the symbols of status are removed from the king while he sits on King Edward's chair, the coronation chair. King Edward I of England commissioned the coronation chair to house the Stone of Scone, or the Stone of Destiny. According to Scottish legend, it was this stone on which the biblical Jacob laid and dreamt of the ladder of angels. The stone now resides in the Castle of Edinburgh, but will be present at the coronation of King Charles III. During the ceremony of Queen Elizabeth II, the anointing was considered sacred, so it was not filmed. A canopy of gold cloth will likely be placed over the king as the holy oil is poured into the oldest item in the crown jewels, i.e. the coronation or anointing spoon. The monarch is anointed with the anointing spoon and the canopy is withdrawn. Afterward, the king will rise and proceed to kneel between the altar and King Edward's chair. The archbishop will pronounce the blessing and the monarch returns to the coronation chair. The anointing ceremony is a central feature of the coronation. Many times, it was described as the unction, and it's symbolic of the conferment of God's grace on a sovereign. The anointing service originally had a twofold purpose: to establish the authority of the church and reduce disputes over royal eligibility. A former dean of Westminster had observed that the anointing of the sovereign that precedes the coronation resembles the ordination of a priest or the consecration of a bishop. Such an interesting observation. In 1066, when William the Conqueror was crowned, he was described as the Dominus Anglorum, and his wife, the Domina Anglorum. After the anointing, they were known as the Rex and Regina Anglorum. Number 10. The investiture. At this section of the ceremony, the monarch is dressed in the colobium sindonis, a loose-lined garment, the robe royal or supertunica, a long coat of gold silk flowing down to the ankles with flowing sleeves which bear the national symbols on it, and the girdle, which is the last item the sovereign will wear. The officials will now proceed to present the symbols of sovereignty, like the gold spurs, which represent chivalry, and the jeweled sword in its scabbard. The king will place his hand on the spurs as a token of acceptance and hand over the sword to the Dean of Westminster at the altar before returning to the coronation chair. The bracelets of sincerity and wisdom, or the armills, are placed on the king's wrists by the archbishop. The king then stands, and he'll be invested with the stole and pallium by the Lord's great chamberlain, who fastens the plaids of the robe. The king will regain his seat and receive the orb in his right hand and will return it to the dean to place it back on the altar. The next item on the list is the coronation ring, which will be placed on the fourth finger of his right hand, over which was placed the coronation glove presented by an appointed member of the peerage. The last items to be delivered to King Charles are the scepter, placed on his right hand, and the rod on his left hand respectively. Both items are presented by the archbishop. Number 11. Crowning. The archbishop, accompanied by other bishops, will then stand before the king as the Dean of Westminster brings St. Edward's crown from the altar. The dean passes it to the archbishop, who places it on the sovereign's head, and everyone in the abbey bears witness with a loud declaration of "God save the king" repeatedly. After the declaration, the princes, princesses, and every dignitary will likely give a symbolic gesture, and by a signal, the great guns in strategic places will be fired. The archbishop will say a prayer, the choir sings an anthem, and the archbishop finishes with the benediction. Number 12. The enthronement. At this point, the ceremony is gradually coming to a close. After the benediction, the king will rise from the coronation chair, while the sword of state is carried in front of him as he ascends the steps of his throne. In front of the throne, the king will be lifted into it by the archbishops, bishops, and other dignitaries, who later stand around the throne steps. The archbishop is left standing before the king as he says the exaltation. Number 13. The homage. The homage is the section where top-ranking officials of the UK, the peers of the realm, and other dignitaries swear allegiance to the sovereign. After the enthronement, the king will hand over the scepter and the rod to their respective bearers, remove the coronation glove from his right hand, and allow the Archbishop of Canterbury to kneel before him. The Archbishop goes first because he's the highest-ranked Archbishop of the UK. He kneels before the king, takes his hand between the king's hands, and proclaims his words of fealty. Next goes the other archbishops and bishops, those with seats in the House of Lords, according to their rank. After the Lord Spirituals, the peers of the realm are expected to come to swear fealty. Previously, each peer of the realm was expected to go up to the sovereign and swear fealty individually. But in 1953, due to time constraints, only the senior peer in each order of the peerage pays homage. Then, the senior peer of each degree, dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts, and barons, goes up to the sovereign to pay homage while his peers kneel in their place to pay homage. They're then expected to touch the crown on the sovereign's head and kiss him on the left cheek after their words of fealty. After the relevant individuals swear fealty, the monarch receives the spear and rod once again. There is speculation that the homage will be scrapped during King Charles III's coronation, since most hereditary peers were removed from Parliament and they have little political influence. However, it's unlikely since the Archbishop of Canterbury and Prince William, Prince of Wales, and Duke of Cornwall will be present. In addition, the homage will be an interesting section to watch, since King Charles wants to recognize other religious organizations in the UK. We might be getting a slight modification of the 1953 version. Number 14. The Communion and Recess. The king gives the spear and rod to their bearers, removes his crown, and takes communion with his queen consort. He puts his crown back and once again receives the scepter and rod from their bearers. The choir sings and the archbishop gives the blessing. The king descends from the throne with his crown on his head and the scepter and rods in his hands. He'll head towards St. Edward's Chapel and deliver the scepter and rod to the archbishop. He gives St. Edward's crown to the archbishop and disrobes the other vestments of office, while he proceeds to join the return procession with the imperial state crown on his head. Number 15. Live broadcast. In 1953, Queen Elizabeth II's coronation ceremony was broadcast on television. All but the anointing and communion were seen by an estimated 27 million people in the UK, while others listened to the radio broadcast in England, Ireland, Wales, and Scotland. Countries like Canada also watched the coronation ceremony. Since Queen Elizabeth II's funeral was covered by cable channels and available on livestream, the coronation ceremony of King Charles III will certainly be televised and live-streamed. In addition, King Charles III will likely give a coronation speech, like his grandfather and mother before him. Although King Charles wants a smaller coronation ceremony, considering his age and the recession the UK is currently experiencing, we can't blame him. The pomp and pageantry displayed during the royal funeral of Queen Elizabeth II and King Charles III's accession sparked the interest of the global community, and we eagerly await the royal coronation. What are you most excited to see during the coronation ceremony of King Charles III? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thanks so much for watching, and be sure to like our video and subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that little notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos.